Today, we're going to be taking a look at Bitcoin, but we're going to be taking a look at the Bitcoin price action in relation to the US election. This is something that we've looked at previously. We've looked at how the US election has impacted the financial markets. We've specifically taken a look at what happens 1 year after the election. And in today's video, we're going to be taking a more granular look at what happens on the US election day and what happens in the kind of January 20th inauguration day. These are going to be some key moments in history where we've seen some interesting volatility for BTC, and I want to kind of speculate on what's going to happen here in 2024 and 2025 once we kind of see the US election day pass and as we get into 2025. As I get into today's video, smash that like button if you find it useful, informative. If you're new, subscribe, and let's jump right down into the charts. Now, for anyone who's new, this particular chart might seem a little bit daunting. It might seem like there's a lot going on and it's quite complicated and hard to understand. So let's just quickly break down what this is looking at. Okay, so this is Bitcoin paired up with the US dollar on the 1 week Bitstamp chart, and you can see here that we have these big bars coming down the charts, right? There's basically 4 colors to this. We have yellow, blue, purple, and orange. Basically, we have the election year, followed by 1 year after the election, 2 years after the election, and then a pre-election year, or +3, depending on how you want to look at it, and of course an election year. Okay, so we have a 4-year cycle. Okay, so we have the election year, 1, 2, 3, or pre-election year, and then we get back into the cycle. Now, obviously, one of the key points that we kind of want to talk about here is that we can see that the election year has coincided with the Bitcoin halving event, right? We can see here that the Bitcoin halving event has happened on every single election year so far. But what we do want to kind of point out, or at least I want to point out to everyone, is that that's a bit of an interesting point, because a lot of people believe that the Bitcoin halving event happens every 4 years, but this is not technically true. And what we are seeing here is actually a difference between time of each of these Bitcoin halving events. It's going to become a point where we no longer have a Bitcoin halving event coinciding with an election year. So I want to kind of speculate on, is it the Bitcoin halving event itself that is a catalyst to kind of bull markets, as so many people believe, or is it in fact actually the US election year that is the catalyst to the bullish market? I believe it's the election year, not the Bitcoin halving event. I think the Bitcoin halving event it's an interesting thing, but it doesn't have a direct impact on Bitcoin's price action instantaneously. This is something that actually has a more gradual approach over a significant period of time. And obviously it has more of an impact on price action at the beginning of Bitcoin's life cycle than it does as time progresses. Of course, Bitcoin's halving event has less and less impact. Okay, so it's important to note these things. But personally, I think the election year is more important than that of the Bitcoin halving event. Interesting to kind of see how you guys feel about that. Let me know in the comments or join us in our free Discord, linked in the description. But anyway, moving on away from the Bitcoin halving events, we're going to be talking about the election years. So we have election year 1, 2, 3, and then election year again, and so forth. So over on the far left-hand side, I'm just going to pull it over here. We have 2012. This is a 2012 election, okay? And for anyone who doesn't know when US election day is, it is the first Tuesday after the first Monday, which might sound really bonkers to anyone not inside the US. But basically what they're saying there is that it's going to be the second Tuesday so it's going to be the first Tuesday as long as Tuesday is not the first of the month. Okay, so basically it can't be Tuesday the first, but it'll be the second Tuesday if Tuesday is the first. So essentially, to kind of make that really simple, they kind of say, and I say simple, it's kind of a bit backwards anywhere else, but they say it's going to be the first Tuesday after the first Monday. If, of course, the first Monday is not going to be, the beginning of the month and so forth, then we're obviously going to see, a little bit of a delay in that. But for the most part, we're talking early November. Okay, so it's the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November. All right. To anyone else outside the US, it just sounds so crazy. But anyway, we are, of course, talking early November for the US election day. Okay, so what does that mean in terms of where we were back here in 2012? Well, we can actually see here that we saw a kick to the upside, or a pump to the upside in that particular moment. So we know there was a bit of a cooling off just beforehand. We obviously saw that there was this big dump down in August, a bit of a push to the upside in September, cooling off in October into November, and then a push to the upside. Okay, so we know that on the US election day in 2012, we saw a push to the upside in Bitcoin's price action. We went from $10 to $14. I mean, it's crazy, right? Some phenomenal prices on Bitcoin. Of course, if we pull this back down, we can go ahead and check out what happened in 2017, right? All in around that particular area of the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November or early November. And we can see that we had, again, a little bit of cooling off just as we kind of go into the beginning of November. So we wouldn't have actually seen, would we have done? Yeah, we would have seen the US election day happening right here, and then we would have seen a push to the upside straight after that. So we can see that basically the US election day was also very much a green time for Bitcoin, taking that price action from $699 up towards these, at the end of the year, I should say, to $1,000. So again, we saw some pretty good growth in Bitcoin's price action right in and around the US election day. What about 2021, 2020, which is where we saw the other election? Well, we can see over here, we kind of go into October in a really strong way. We kind of come into November right in here, meaning that we actually did see a push to the upside again on this candle. So we can see that the US election day happened right here, and we saw this push to the upside. Although there was some more volatility in here over the couple of weeks kind of after the US election, but we did see a push to the upside, taking that price action from 15,464 to approximately 18,500. Okay, so we saw a bit of a push to the upside. That means 3 out of 3 times we have seen the Bitcoin price action react positively to the US election day, okay, in early November. Okay, so that means where we are right now in 2024, we have a high probability of history repeating itself. As history has always done this before, we have the idea that history might repeat itself, as it tends to do, and in which case we're going to see a positive November. Now, at the moment, we believe that we're going to see a rectember, that being September being a very bad time. We have the US interest rate cuts potentially happening, which we think is going to be a significant pull to the downside for BTC's price action, probably meeting that with a little bit of a kind of stagnant kind of consolidation phase in October, and then a fantastic run as we kind of get into election day. That'll be my kind of idea here. Okay, so what happens not on election day, but what happens in and around January, which would be our inauguration day, right? It's January 20th over in the US. Well, that has some interesting kind of things going on as well. As we can see over here in 2013, as we kind of got into that kind of time, we saw a fantastic run to the upside. All of this price action was in and around inauguration day, January 20th over in the US. So again, here we have the very first piece of data that we have on Bitstamp data showing positive price action in and around the January 20th level. Okay, so what happens in 2017? Well, in 2017, just after the election year, we can see that January 20th coming in right here, we actually saw a bump to the upside as well. Not as clean or as good as what we saw previously, but still a bump to the upside. We kind of climb up into March by 79% for Bitcoin's price action before cooling off and then really rallying strongly. Okay, so 2 out of 2 so far. What happens in 2021? Well, in 2021, we do see, again, around January 20th, a bump to the upside, going from our existing lows down here on January 18th, upwards, we see here growth to the upside of, well, yeah, I'll cover it there, 102%. So again, we see 3 for 3 here coming in with the idea that January 20th, inauguration day in the US, has been very positive. So we expect January 2025 to be very, very positive. The other thing that's kind of worth noting, because this is actually the second time I've recorded this video because my record button doesn't seem to want to work or didn't want to work in the previous recording. I'm not sure if I've mentioned this already, but the year one after the year one after the election year is the bull market high. This has happened every single time. We have the all-time high in 2013, all-time high in 2017, all-time high in 2021, and we expect an all-time high in 2025, right? So every single 2025, every single plus 1 year on the election year, so 1 year after the election year, we've seen a bull market peak. Okay, so where we are at the minute is basically looking at history through the lens of, okay, is the US election a key pivotal moment for Bitcoin's price action. And well, to me, no matter which way I want to look at this, whether I look at it through the US election day, inauguration day, whether we look at it as plus 1 year or plus 2 years, and and all that kind of stuff, we can see some pivotal things happening with the price action of BTC. Now, sure, it could be coincidence, but we are on the 4th iteration of this, and if it continues to do this, then actually I'm going to say that it's probably not a coincidence, and actually there's probably a lot more to this, specifically within the psychology of markets. So we are looking for 2025 to be a phenomenal year for Bitcoin, and it's going to be a phenomenal time, I believe, for the entire crypto space. So at the moment, where we currently sit in an election year, we should be expecting more volatility, as we always historically have done. We've seen great runs to the upside historically and great pushes to the downside. We obviously have already gone up into new all-time highs, which is the first time in Bitcoin's history that we've done that before a Bitcoin halving event. Another reason as to why the Bitcoin halving event is a little bit misleading. I think people kind of hinge a lot of hopes and dreams on that idea rather than actually thinking about what's going on in the background, such as the Federal Reserve, monetary policy, the ECB, the Bank of England, the Federal Reserve, obviously, and the US elections, general elections, and all that kind of stuff. These are key political points that actually do have a significant impact on price action, it would appear, at least for Bitcoin and for the wider crypto market. So as we sit here today, I look at the market and say, well, 2024 is a year full of opportunities. Not as good, of course, as year 2, because everyone knows plus 2 years on the election, I say everyone, we know anyway within our community, that this is the bear market low point. And every single time we have seen a bear market low 2 years after the election year, which means 2025 is going to be our peak and 2026 is going to be our low point. The pre-election year, as I've kind of dubbed it here, or plus 3, is your consolidation phase where you do a lot of accumulation. And then, of course, we go into the election year, which we see more kind of consolidation and pumps to the upside. But ultimately, it's the plus 1 year that sees the significant growth in BTC's price action. So this was a video requested by one of our members down in our Discord server. Wanted to know a little bit more as to the price action in relation to the US election day. And I wanted to also throw in there some of these other mechanics around what goes on in inauguration day on January 20th, obviously, as well as what happens on election day over in the US. And it appears that we should be expecting some pretty positive things on Bitcoin's price action if, of course, the price action decides to repeat itself. Now, obviously, history does have a tendency to repeating itself until it doesn't. But as it sits today, we have a pretty successful rate here of showing that actually Bitcoin has a positive reaction to these fundamental things happening in the real world. Now, guys, you can let me know what your thoughts are on all of this in the comments down below, or join us in our free Discord server. We'd love to hear from you. And if you haven't done so yet, check out my second channel here, where I go through the Cardano technical analysis every single day.